In this video, we're going to teach you another way to add an element to our advanced dictionaries. So in our last video, we went ahead and set up our dictionary, which is going to have a string as a key and a list of strings as our value pair. We created two entries right off the bat, so a grocery key with a list and a close key with a list. We filled in our grocery list with an apple, pear, and banana. Then we went and filled in our clothing list with a shoe, a sock, a tie, and a shirt. Then we used a for loop to cycle through the first one, and a for each loop to cycle through our closing ones. So that's the two different ways to loop. Okay. Now, what I'm going to teach you now is how to add a new dictionary element. So you don't always have to add them here when you actually create the dictionary. In fact, it's kind of weird when you start off with stuff inside of here, because usually this will come from user input most of the times. Okay. So how to add a new dictionary element is we need two different things in order to add it, right? So we need a name or a string that is going to be a store name. And what else do we need? Well, we need a list of strings, and those are going to be the items to buy. Now, we could get these from the user input, which we could get prompt the user for a string and then use that as it. But that's going to be some added layers of stuff. We might do it in some later videos. And then in our first starting ones, we actually created a blank list and then filled it in by using calling upon the actual dictionary element. But I'm going to show you something else different as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a string, and I'm going to call this one store name, and I'm going to set it equal to the pet store. So I'm just going to put a text string of pet. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of strings and then add elements to it. So let's create a list of open, closing caret string outside of it. And these are going to be items to buy equals new list open, closing caret strings, open, closing parentheses, and that semicolon. So now I have a separate string and a separate list. Okay. So now that I have this list called items to buy, I can actually fill it in. So let's fill in some of the items in the items to buy list for pets. To buy for pets. So I'm going to say items to buy, a period, an add, open closing parentheses, and a semicolon. And inside of here, what's the first thing I'm going to buy at the pet store? Well, let's buy, how about a ball? Let's do items to buy, and then a dot add, open closing, semicolon. And inside of here, let's say we're going to buy a bowl. And I'm just going to add 2 in for now, so we have different numbers, because up here we had 3 groceries, 4 clothing, so I'm just going to do 2 pets. I feel like I should have 1 turtle dove, but you know. All right, so now that I have the string and a list, I can go ahead and add this pair to my dictionary. The way to do that is to use the add method of the dictionary. So shopping list, a period for that dot syntax, capital add, open closing parentheses, and a semicolon. Now I have to add in both the key and value pair. So remember, the key is the string of the name of the store. So that is going to be store name, and then a comma, and then our whole entire list, so items to buy. Now in this example, I didn't create a blank list and store it in the dictionary first. I instead created a blank list by itself, filled it in, and then put the whole filled list into that dictionary element. So this will now add our third box to our dictionary, and now we created a key of pet and stored inside of it a ball and bowl. Let's go ahead and access some of these values. So let's access the pet store items. So we can either use a for or a for each loop, but since I'm not changing any of the items and just going to be outputting them, I'm going to use the for each loop method instead. So for each, open closing parentheses, open closing curly braces, and split those apart. Now I have to think, what data type is one individual element inside of our list? Well, that's going to be a string, and I'm going to call it item. In, now don't get confused here, because I don't want to use our items to buy list, right? I want to go inside of our dictionary list. Okay, that's kind of the key thing. The reason I'm doing this, by the way, is once we start looping, we can then make the store name something different and make our items to buy something different each and every time, and then put it inside of our list as well. And we're going to use this in one of our future videos. Okay. For now, we're going to do string item in the name of our dictionary, shopping list, square brackets, text string inside of it, and the text string is going to be pet. How did I know that? Because that is the key that we filled into it. Okay. Inside of here, console write line, and I'm going to put a pet store item that I want to buy is, and then let's use our open closing curly braces this time with a 0 inside of it. Outside of our text string, a comma, and we're just going to put item. That's going to be that temporary variable that we're creating right here in our for each loop. Let's run it. Let's see what we get. Here we go. A pet store item that I want to buy is ball, and a pet store item that I want to buy is bowl. So there we go. So now that we know this works, we can always add more dictionary elements later at any given time. Now I did want to show you one last thing to do, is if you did want to create a dictionary item and not create this list, you can do that as well. So let's create a fourth dictionary item or element. And this one, I'm going to go ahead and kind of create it on the fly here. So I'm going to say shopping list dot add open closing and a semicolon. And inside of here, I need a text string. So we can say that I want to go to the electronics store, and then a comma, and then a new list string, open closing parentheses. So in this case, in one line, what I did was I just hard-coded electronics. So this is instead of creating a string variable, and instead of creating a temporary list of strings, I just created a blank one that lives already inside of my dictionary. So now if I want to fill in some electronics I want to buy, I want to buy, how do we do it? Shopping list, square brackets, I am going to spell this wrong, so I'm going to cheat and copy and paste this one. Set of double quotes with electronics inside of it, dot add, open closing parentheses and a semicolon, and I'm going to buy, what do I want? I want a PS5. Who needs a 4 anymore? Let's get the 5. Let's add a shopping list, square brackets, electronics, dot add, open closing and a semicolon. Inside of here, set of double quotes. And what do I want? I want the new Nest. Let's go with Nest, and then it's the Nest thermostat, but I'll never be able to spell thermostat. And then we added 2 different things to it. You know what, let's add a third one just in case. Shopping list, square brackets, set of double quotes, electronics, dot add, and I want a new, let's do a new car radio. Perfect. Now instead of doing the for each loop, let's just use a for loop this time again. Open closing parentheses, open closing curly braces, split those apart. It's going to be a lot like we did earlier. So int I equal to 0, semicolon, I is less than, shopping list square brackets, set of double quotes, electronics, because that's the store, dot count, because that is the number of elements inside of the electronic shopping list, semicolon, I++, inside of here, console right line, set of double quotes, and electronic, I want to buy is, outside of our text string, plus sign, shopping list, square brackets, set of double quotes, electronics, square bracket with an I inside of it. Let's run it. And there we go, PS5, Nest, and car radio. So this has been two different ways to add new elements. So we can either create a string variable and a list of string, and then add them in by themselves. So we can create them. Now you would do this if you were prompting the user for maybe an answer, right? Then you could use that. Maybe prompting the user to fill in some of the item list, and then you can put the whole item in at once. Or you can create them just using a .add and just type them in like this as well. Either way, you can cycle through them using a for each loop or a for loop so far.